The mighty revolt of 1857 started in the northern and central part of India exactly on 10th of May 1857. Clear? Now, there are several reasons. What are the aspects to be known about mighty revolt of 1857? Clear? So, revolt of 1857. First thing that to be known about this revolt is the causes or the reasons that led to this revolt. Clear? Causes or reasons were, number one, first of all, the major cause was economic policy of the British East India Company that led to much distress and famines and casualty of human beings. Clear? First was economic policy, then was political policy of annexation, especially the annexation of Awadh in 1856. Then at the same time, after this, it was socio-culture policy, even though it was progressive in nature, but not acceptable by the Brahmins and the Ulemas because they considered British to be outsider to interfere in the socio-cultural life. And lastly, the immediate factor that led to the outbreak of this revolt was the issue of greased cartridges, whereby certain cartridges were given to Indian sepoys and there was a news that these cartridges contained the fat of cow and pig, which is prohibited to be touched or consumed by members of both religious communities. So these sepoys only began to revolt, and that marked the beginning of mighty revolt. So reasons would be economic, political, socio-cultural, and the issue of immediate factor known as greased cartridges. Clear? This revolt started on 10th of May 1857 at a place known as Meerut, Kant area. It started on 10th of May 1857. Very soon, the sepoys reached Delhi and they proclaimed the Mughal Emperor Bahadur Shah Zafar to be the head of Indian territory as well as the head of the revolt. This marked the formal beginning of this revolt. When this revolt started, this revolt took place at 5 major centers in northern and central part of India. The first major center, now coming to the centers of the revolt, the first major center was the region of Delhi. At Delhi, the revolt was led by, formally by Bahadur Shah Zafar, the Mughal emperor. However, on behalf of Bahadur Shah Zafar, the military general Bakht Khan fought against the British forces. Clear? Another major center of this revolt was the region of Kanpur, where the revolt was led by Maratha ruler Nana Sahib, who wanted increment in the amount of pension. And on behalf of Nana Sahib, the person who fought against British forces, this person was Tantya Tope. Clear? At the same time, clear, the third major center was Lucknow, where the revolt was led by Begum Hazrat Mahal after Wajid Ali Shah. She wanted to ensure the throne of Lucknow or Awadh for her son Birjis Qadr. Clear? Fourth major center of revolt was the region of Jhansi in central India, where the revolt was led by Rani Lakshmi Bai, who wanted her adopted son to be succeeded on the throne of Jhansi. And the fifth major center was the region of Ara in Bihar, where revolt was led by Kumar Singh, who wanted to retain his jamindari rights over the village of Jagdishpur. 5 major centers of revolt. Factual details are important, questions are asked. Clear? And you should know the reasons also. Bahadur Shah Zafar took the responsibility of revolting just to revive the lost prestige of Mughal Empire. Nana Sahib wanted increment in the amount of pension. Hazrat Mahal wanted to place her son Birjis Qadr on the throne of Awadh. Rani Lakshmi wanted to have her adopted son on the throne of Jhansi. Kumar Singh wanted to retain his zamindari rights over Jagdishpur. That indicate none of them were influenced by any feelings of nationalism. All of them were guided by forces or all guided by personal and regional interests. So revolt of 1857 was not guided by any sense of modern nationalism, and therefore it became much more easier for British to suppress this revolt because these leaders did not present any collective and coordinated front against the British. Clear? So all these revolts were suppressed at different centers separately by British, which became an easier task for British. Clear? That is why we'll see at Delhi, this revolt was suppressed by a British officer, John Nicholson. John Nicholson subdued the revolt. He even assassinated all the sons of Bahadur Shah Zafar, and he exiled Bahadur Shah Zafar to Rangoon, where he died in 1862, modern Myanmar. Clear? At Kanpur and Lucknow, two adjoining cities, clear, the revolt was suppressed by British officer Sir Colin Campbell. So Sir Colin Campbell suppressed the revolt at Kanpur and Lucknow. At Jhansi, the revolt was suppressed by a military officer, Sir Hugrose. And at Ara, the revolt was suppressed by British officer Sir William Taylor. They can give it to match also. Clear? Sir William Taylor. So at Delhi, the revolt was suppressed by Nicholson. Kanpur and Lucknow, two adjoining areas, revolt suppressed by Sir Colin Campbell. Jhansi by Hugrose, and Ara by William Taylor. William Taylor. Sir, last place is Ara, A-R-R-A-H. Ara located in Bihar. Clear? Major revolt. So this revolt was suppressed easily by British by 1857 only. Even though the revolt was suppressed, clear, British East India Company was criticized by British parliamentarians sitting back in London, and they began to claim that since a mighty revolt of this dimension has taken place in India, British East India Company has lost all moral rights to rule over Indian territory. Since they have lost all moral rights to rule over Indian territory, clear, at this time serious differences and changes began to take place, and just after the suppression of this revolt only, British parliamentarians in London, they came together to enact a comprehensive legislation for India. This legislation is known as the Government of India Act 1858. Clear? So Government of India Act 1858 was enacted. Why it is known as Government of India Act? Because this legislation was enacted under the guidance of British Crown to bring about structural and long-term changes in Indian affairs. So any legislation enacted by British Parliament to enact or to result into structural changes, long-term changes in Indian administration was always termed as Government of India Act. Three such acts were passed for India. One was Government of India Act 1858, second was Government of India Act 1919, and third is Government of India Act 1935. All these acts are therefore very important because they introduce structural changes in Indian administration. With this, we'll move on to discuss the consequences. So first is causes. First is the causes that you need to know. Second are the centers of the revolt, associated leaders, their objectives, and the person suppressed. And third would be consequences. Clear? You need to know about consequences. So three major aspects needs to be understood: causes, course on centers, and then the consequences. So now we'll move on to discuss about the consequences of the revolt of 1857, the most important being enactment of a comprehensive legislation known as Government of India Act 1858. Why it is known as Government of India Act 1858 we had discussed. It led to structural changes of long-term character in Indian affairs. It's clear? So now we'll move on to discuss about Government of India Act 1858. So Government of India Act 1858, also known as Act for Better Administration. ठीक है, मैं हिंदी में भी थोड़ा ब्रीफ कर दूं. क्लियर? 1857 का विद्रोह, इनके तीन पहलुओं को आपको जानना है. सबसे पहले तो कारण क्या क्या थे. उनका आर्थिक कारण था, राजनीतिक कारण था, सामाजिक कारण था, और एक एक कारण ऐसा था जिससे विद्रोह का प्रारंभ होता है, जिसे हम ग्रीस कार्टेजेस कहते हैं। यह विद्रोह अलग अलग सेंटरों केंद्रों पर चलता है, जैसे दिल्ली, लखनऊ, कानपुर, झांसी, आरा, जहां हर केंद्र पर जो लोग होते हैं, जो रिवोल्ट करते हैं, जो विद्रोह करते हैं, उनका अप्रोच बिल्कुल अलग था। इस कारण से ये विद्रोह आसानी से समाप्त भी कर दिया जाता है अलग अलग केंद्रों पर। इससे ये विद्रोह जल्द ही समाप्त होता है, लेकिन इस विद्रोह के समाप्त होते ही ब्रिटेन के सांसद ये निर्णय लेते हैं कि भारत में महत्वपूर्ण परिवर्तनों की आवश्यकता है और ब्रिटिश ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी के शासनकाल को समाप्त किया जाना भी आवश्यक है। इस उद्देश्य के साथ ब्रिटिश सांसद एक महत्वपूर्ण अधिनियम को पारित करते हैं, जिस अधिनियम को भारत सरकार अधिनियम 1858 कहा जाता है। यह सबसे बड़ा प्रभाव दिखा जाता है 1857 के विद्रोह का। इस संक्षिप्त इस कारण से यहां पे हम गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया एक्ट 1858 के प्रावधानों को समझेंगे। ये सारे अधिनियम काफी महत्वपूर्ण है आपके एग्जाम के लिए। क्लियर? निक So, Hindi, sometimes Hindi. Now, coming to the provisions of the Government of India Act 1858. Clear? Just understand. Okay, Divyani Varat. You wanted to ask something, Divyani? You have only given a question mark. I am looking to all concepts clear, sir. All of you are comfortable with the speed. We need to have the speed because obviously it's a marathon session. Most of you must have covered these areas. It is being revised, it is being reinforced so that you are able to collect them at one place. And we are touching on all those areas from where questions are asked, and you will get questions in coming time also. Is it clear to all of you? Yeah, invincible, nice way to cover. All concepts clear. Dhiraj. Yasmin Khan, yes sir, clear? So, Rudra, yes sir, invincible, yes sir, fine, clear? So, Raksha Yadav, yes sir, all good, fine, good, clear. Keep on just reviewing things, just telling me so that we can continue with same zeal and enthusiasm. We have to cover most of it today, clear? So, coming to it, Sasi sir, yes, clear sir. So, coming to Government of India Act 1858, just understand the provisions. भारत सरकार अधिनियम 1858 के प्रावधानों को समझिए। ये सारे अधिनियम काफी महत्वपूर्ण है। सबसे पहले क्लियर, under the provisions of the Government of India Act 1858, the political power and authority of British East India Company was taken away. So British East India Company could continue only for trade. केवल व्यापार के लिए वो रह सकते थे. They could not enjoy any political and administrative authority. Clear? Meanwhile, as per this act, British Crown in London took the charge to look after Indian affairs, and therefore it marked the beginning of Crown's rule over India in place of Company's rule over India. This development took place at the same time. Clear? Apart from this, when British Crown took responsibility to look after Indian territory, he also made it clear no more policy of political annexation would be pursued in India. Clear? Since no more policy of political annexation was to be pursued in India, it divided the whole Indian territory into two major sections. So, under Government of India Act, Indian territory or India was broadly divided into two sections. One was the section known as British India, over which British Crown was supposed to rule directly. Another was large number of independent provinces which still could not be conquered by British, and they were to remain independent as per British Crown. All these princely states all these provinces came to be known as princely states in India, and there were as many as 565 princely states in Indian Union. So India as such got divided into British India on the one hand and the Crown, and large number of princely states as many as 565. Clear? Moreover, it was made clear that British Crown will respect the independence of these princely states. In case any agreement or treaty has to be signed between British India and any princely state, it will be signed by British Crown and the ruler of princely states. But since British Crown could not come to India again and again because there were 565 princely states in India, British Crown deputed his direct envoy to India. This direct envoy to sign treaties with princely states, this envoy came to be known as Viceroy in India. Clear? So Viceroy proved to be the direct representative of British Crown to sign agreement or treaty with princely states of India. Clear? And therefore in this capacity he was known as Viceroy. But at the same time, when he looked after general administration of British India, he was still designated as Governor General. So post of Governor General was still retained informally. So when this officer signed treaty with princely states on behalf of British Crown, he was designated as Viceroy. When he looked after general administration of British India, he was still designated as Governor General of India. Raksha Yadav, sir, you are absolutely fluent in Hindi English. Thank you so much. Clear? Thank you so much. Fine. So princely states, clear? So Governor General, this concept is clear. He was still known as Viceroy when he looked after, or when he signed agreement with princely states. When he still was known as Governor General when he looked after general administration of British India. This was major development that took place in the Government of India Act 1858. Moreover, under the provisions of Government of India Act 1858, it was also made clear that there would be a proper separate legislature in India. Clear? So apart from Governor General's Executive Council, which was already there, there was to be a central legislative council. There was to be a central legislative council. Even though some decision was taken in 1853 Act also, but proper establishment of central legislative council took place in 1858 Act. Clear? And this central legislative council was also to include only British members. Clear? However, one thing should be noted is central legislative council was to remain merely as advisory bodies, merely as suggestive bodies, the real power still being confined to Governor General's Executive Council. Clear? So real power still remained confined to Governor General's Executive Council, Central Legislative Council being only advisory in nature. Clear? Moreover, since British India became a separate entity, British India as per Government of India Act 1858 was divided into 11 states under British Crown, and all these 11 states were to have Executive Council and a Legislative Council. Clear? At provincial level, the Executive Council was to be headed simply by Governor. Clear? And at provincial level, there was to be provincial legislative councils, and at provincial level also, legislative councils were to remain merely as advisory bodies. So structural changes were introduced in Indian administration under Government of India Act 1858, and all these 11 provinces, they became very important course of national movement. These 11 provinces were the United Province, that is present day Uttar Pradesh and Uttarakhand. Then there was Central Province, Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh, Central Province. Then Bombay, Madras, Bihar, Odisha, Bengal, Punjab, Northwest Frontier Province, Sindh, Assam, the entire northeastern region. Assam, 11 provinces. Clear? And all these 11 provinces, there was to be a provincial executive council headed by governor and provincial legislative council as advisory bodies. All these changes, structural changes introduced in the Government of India Act 1858, and therefore it is known as the Act for Better Administration. Now, since this Act provided for Central Legislative Council, it was made clear that all incremental changes in Indian administration were to be introduced in India itself through legislations enacted by Central Legislative Council, meaning thereby minor changes were not to be introduced by legislations enacted by British Parliament. Only structural changes were to be introduced by British Parliament. Minor changes could be introduced by Central Legislative Council within India. So all those legislations enacted within India by Central Legislative Council, these legislations came to be known as Indian Councils Act. Clear? And 3 such Councils Act were enacted within India. These Councils Act being known as Indian Councils Act of 1861, Indian Councils Act of 1892 and Indian Council Act of 1909, also based on Morley Minto reforms. Clear? These are known as Councils Act because they were enacted within India and they were enacted by Central Legislative Council. Clear? So by this time terminologies must be very clear to you. Clear? Regulating Act because purpose was to regulate the affairs of company and court of directors. Pitt's India Act because legislation was proposed by Pitts the Younger. Charter Act just to ensure accountability after every 20 years. And then we have the Government of India Act, that means structural changes to be introduced of long-term character by British Parliament. Indian Councils Act, the act enacted within India by Central Legislative Council. So you need to understand the terminologies also, phrases also, so that provisions will automatically come to your mind. Clear? Now, the first act which was enacted within India through Central Legislative Council after this legislation was Indian Councils Act of 1861, and this Indian Council Act of 1861 itself introduced some major progressive changes in India. Clear? So now here only we'll discuss about Indian Councils Act of 1861. Clear? So Indian Councils Act 1861. Clear? Now it's clear, enacted within India by Central Legislative Council. Under the provisions of Indian Councils Act of 1861. Clear? First of all, the concept of departmentalization. Departmentalization was introduced, whereby similar administrative works were clubbed together to establish administrative departments. Clear? And when these administrative departments were established, these administrative departments were allotted to the members of only Executive Council, no members of Legislative Council. So even at central level it was to be given to Central Executive Council members, at provincial level it was to be given to members of Provincial Executive Council, not to the members of Legislative Councils. Clear? And this phenomena of allotting administrative departments to the members of Executive Council, this phenomena or this practice came to be known as the portfolio system. So the portfolio system was established under the Indian Councils Act of 1861. At the same time, under the provisions of the Indian Council Act of 1861, the provision was made to issue or to give, provision was made to give ordinance making power. To give ordinance making power to the Governor General. Ordinance making power means temporary legislations to be enacted by Governor General, so that with this ordinance making power, the Governor General, clear? The Governor General could pass any legislation to deal with any natural calamity like earthquakes, floods or landslides. Clear? So just to ensure that there was proper ordinance making power to deal with natural calamity, Governor General was authorized to issue ordinance making power at this time. These two major provisions were made under Indian Councils Act of 1861. Remaining Councils Act will again come as per the progress of Indian national movement. It's clear? So two provisions, portfolio system and the concept of ordinance making power at this time. Is it clear? Is it clear? Clear? No, at the same time, clear? Apart from this, we'll discuss about the beginning of modern nationalism after this, because just after the mighty suppression of the revolt, of the mighty revolt of 1857, clear? Thereafter, national movement began to take place as educated Indian leaders came forward and realized and began to contemplate that what has been the possible factor which has led to subjugation of such a vast country like India by a handful of foreigners. And when they began to contemplate on this issue, they realized the major factor for India's subjugation is lack of modern sense of nationalism. Since they realized it is lack of modern sense of nationalism, they began to arouse nationalism among Indians, and that resulted into a prolonged agitation in India, which is known as the world's longest movement, also known as Indian National Movement, that began to take effective stage after the suppression of the mighty revolt of 1857. Now with this we'll move on to the most important topic, that is Indian National Movement. Indian National Movement. Clear? We look into nationalism. It's clear. Everything is clear till this point. Anything to be asked? Just we'll have 2 to 3 minutes. Anything to be asked? Bihar and Orissa province. Bihar and Orissa was separated from Bengal in 1912. Yeah, you are right. But it was part of Bengal till 1912. Indian Council Act once in brief, sir, please. I'll let you know. Portfolio system also. Please revise the Indian Council Act of 1861. Okay, fine. Rajiv Ranjan, actually it was carved out from Bengal province in 19. Bihar became a separate state. Bihar and Orissa was separated in 1912 and Bihar was further separated from Orissa in 1936 as per Government of India Act 1935. Where we start? 1885. No, we'll not start. We'll start before 1885, Faizan. Governor General was appointed by, after 1858, Governor Generals began to be appointed by British Crown in London with support of Secretary of State, who was a member of British Parliament. British Parliament. Revolt of India had only one consequence, that no, there were many consequences. We'll come to that. Clear? Even now at this time only. Clear? Formation of INC. INC will come later on, Faizan. Don't worry. Clear? Pankaj Yadav. Is there any Indian member including Legislative Council and Executive Council till 1861? No. After this only Indian members began to be included. Very aggressive teaching style. Thank you. Thank you so much. 1858 Act again, please. Nasir Mirza. Indian Council Act 1861. Okay, I'll revise. I'll just repeat once again. Don't worry about it. I'll repeat the listening. Okay, fine. Clear? So, you want me to repeat the Provisions of 1858 and 1861. Briefly, I'll let you know. Clear? Under the provisions of the Government of India Act 1858, first of all, the rule of British East India Company was abolished and the rule of British Crown was established in India. Clear? At the same time, clear, British Crown announced that policy of annexation will not be followed in India anymore. And therefore, British Crown decided to separate British India from large number of princely states. In British India, 11 provinces were carved out. Clear? Apart from this, apart from Governor General's Executive Council, there was to be a separate Legislative Council, and this Legislative Council was to be established merely as an advisory body. Clear? So, merely as an advisory body, the Legislative Council was to be established. At the same time, apart from establishing advisory council, in 11 provinces also there was to be a separate provincial executive council and a separate provincial legislative council, and legislative councils both at central and provincial level were to remain only as advisory bodies. Clear? This was made clear. At the same time, apart from this development, advisory bodies, clear, it was also made clear that Governor General will have, or rather Viceroy will have, British Crown will have one representative in India as Viceroy, and this Viceroy will take decisions related to agreement with princely states, and in this capacity he was known as Viceroy. But at the same time, he was also still to be known as Governor General of India when he looked after general administration. This was all major provisions. Clear? At the same time, since Central Legislative Council had been established in India, it was decided that further legislations would be enacted by Central Legislative Council only. Clear? And since it was decided to have Central Legislative Council in India, several legislations began to be enacted, and these legislations are known as Indian Councils Act. Clear? So, Indian Councils Act began to be enacted after this, the first Council Act being 1861 Act. Clear? Under the Indian Council Act of 1861, administrative departments were established, and these administrative departments were allotted to leading members of Executive Council, the system itself being known as the portfolio system. Apart from this portfolio system, clear, it was decided to have ordinance making power with Governor General in order to deal with extraordinary circumstances. Clear? So, in order to deal with extraordinary circumstances, it was decided to have ordinance making power with the Governor General. This was as per this act. Clear? At the same time, clear, these were major provisions, and after this only awareness began to be promoted by large number of national leaders in India, and that marked the beginning of the world's longest movement known as Indian National Movement. It's clear? So, difference between Governor General and Viceroy. Same person, Governor General, Viceroy. Viceroy was supposed to deal with the affairs of princely states on behalf of British Crown in India. Governor General was the same person when he looked after general administration of British India. Clear? Why ordinance making power even if all legislative powers enter Governor and Executive Council? Just because Governor General was not supposed to take the permission from members of Executive Council, rather to take his decision on his own. Clear? Paras, hello sir, good to see you after. Okay, great Paras. Clear? Same here. Next is better clearance. Faizan, clear? Kushal Kumar, sir, Bengal and Bihar was different province in 1858 and how it separated in 19. It was considered to be separate on linguistic ground, but it was formally divided in 1912, and Bihar himself was further separated in 1936 as per Government of India Act 1935. Clear? Niharika, thank you sir. Yasmin Khan, fine. Now let us start with Indian National Movement. Clear? We'll discuss about Indian National Movement. Clear? Now coming to this, clear? See, first of all, clear, after the suppression of the mighty revolt of 1857, several educated leaders in India, they started to create awareness among masses so that India could be transformed into a full-fledged nation. To transform India into a full-fledged nation, they began to, or rather they started to create awareness in India, and all this awareness resulted into Indian national movement. To create such awareness in Indian national movement, several regional political organizations began to be established. Clear? Among those regional political organizations, the most important ones were, first of all, the Pune Sarvajanik Sabha. In Western India, an important organization known as Pune Sarvajanik Sabha was established in 1870. Pune Sarvajanik was established in 1870. Clear? And when this Pune Sarvajanik was established in 1870, huge amount of awareness began to be created for masses in India, in western part of India. Later on in western part of India, another very prominent organization was established, and it was in form of Bombay Presidency Association. Bombay Presidency Association in 1885. In establishment of this organization, major role was played by leaders like Dadabai Naoroji, Firoz Shah Mehta, Badruddin Tayyabji, and K.T. Telang. Very important organization in Bombay. Clear? Right. Exactly. Right. Similarly, political awareness and consciousness began to be established in province of Bengal when leaders of Bengal established Indian Association of Calcutta. In 1876 by leaders like Surendranath Banerjee, and Anand Mohan Bose. Surendranath Banerjee and Anand Mohan Bose. Clear? Right. Just understand, Indian Association of Calcutta. Right. Understand. Similarly, in southern part of India, a regional organization known as Madras Mahajan Sabha was established in 1884 by leaders like G. Subramania Iyer, P. Anand Charlo, and M. Veera Raghavachari. Clear? Right. Just understand, all these regional political organizations created significant amount of political awareness, and by the end of 19th century, they realized that they need to establish a national political body to promote awareness at all India level. And this realization resulted into the establishment of the Indian National Congress in 1885. Clear? Now just understand, however, the concrete idea to establish Indian National Congress was given by a retired British civil servant, A.O. Hume. Clear? retired British civil servant A.O. Hume, and he was advised to establish this organization by British Governor General Lord Ripon. Clear? Lord Ripon was highly progressive in nature, and during the regime of Lord Ripon only, an act was enacted, a proposal was given whereby Indian judges could also try the cases of Europeans in India. This legislative proposal, judicial proposal, was drafted by Lord Ilbert, and it was known as the Ilbert Bill. Clear? So, Ilbert Bill was drafted under the guidance of Lord Ripon, whereby Indian judges could try the cases of British as well. But British members were not ready for such changes, and they began to oppose Ilbert Bill, which indicated racial superiority followed by British. And just because Ilbert Bill could not be passed, Lord Ripon resigned from India, and while departing from India, he advised to A.O. Hume that he must support the idea of establishing an all India body by Indian leaders. And with support of A.O. Hume, Indian National Congress was established, and the first annual conference or session of Indian National Congress was convened at Gokul Das Tejpal Sanskrit College at Bombay on 27th of December 1885. So, on 27th of December 1885 at Gokul Das Tejpal College, clear? Tejpal College, Indian National Congress convened its first annual session. Clear? First annual session. First annual session. Annual, clear? Now just understand, due to close association of A.O. Hume only, clear, the formation of Congress was criticized by some leaders like Lala Lajpat Rai, who advocated the theory of safety wall. Clear? So, the theory of safety wall related to the formation of Congress was given by the national leader Lala Lajpat Rai. Lala Lajpat Rai. Clear? Even though this theory cannot be negated completely, but at the same time, according to scholars like Bipin Chandra, it is considered to be inadequate to explain the formation of Congress. Clear? So, just it cannot explain the expression of, he cannot explain or the formation of Congress totally on this basis. It is considered to be inadequate, but it was given by Lala Lajpat Rai to criticize Congress organization. Clear? Now, when the first session was convened at Sanskrit College at Bombay on 27th of December 1885, this session was attended by 72 delegates, and it was presided by a leader known as W.C. Banerjee. Clear? So, W.C. Banerjee presided over this session, and at the same time, 72 delegates attended, and during this session only, all Congress leaders took a decision that first of all, clear, this body needs to be promoted as an all India political body, and to reinforce all India character, the annual sessions of the Congress must be rotated all across India in different parts, so that to emphasize it was not related to one region. Moreover, it was made clear that wherever the session would be convened, the presiding officer will be a leader not belonging to that province, just to show it had no regional connection. Moreover, the subscription fee for members was kept as low as 5 rupees, so that more and more people could join Indian National Congress. And at the same time, it was made clear Congress is a pure political platform, and social and religious issues cannot be entertained and discussed in the Congress platform. All these deliberations took place in the first session convened at Bombay in 1885, and from here Indian national movement started in a small but organized fashion. Clear? So, this marked the beginning of Indian National Congress from 1885. Initially, the national movement was dominated by a class of leaders who are known as the moderates. Clear? Why they are known as moderates? Because during the first phase of Indian national movement, from 1885 till 1905, almost for 2 decades, clear, at this time Congress or moderate leaders, they believed that there is no need to go for direct confrontation with the British rule. Rather, these leaders were of opinion that direct confrontations neither required nor feasible. They decided to adopt pure constitutional means whereby they advocated their grievances through prayers and petitions to the British so that those grievances could be accepted and policy changes could be done. Meaning thereby they adopted a pure constitutional means of agitation guided by petitions, prayers and applications. Clear? So at the same time it was decided to have only prayers, petitions and applications in order to deal with the get the demands accepted. So it was a pure constitutional agitation, nothing to do with radical means. Just because they adopted pure radical constitutional methods, pure mild strategy, they are known as moderates. And this phase of national movement is known as the moderate phase from 1885 till 1905. Now we'll discuss what were the major contributions of moderate phase and what was the major limitation of the moderate phase. Clear? Constitutional agitation confined with petitions, prayers and applications. Clear? Now first of all, clear, during this moderate phase, clear, the most important contribution of moderate leader was the economic critique of imperialism. Clear? So the most important contribution was the economic critique of imperialism. They were highly educated people and they wanted to show criticism of British economic policy that drained India of major resources. And in economic critique of imperialism, the most important role was played by India's first economic thinker, Dabi Nauroji. Dabi Nauroji. Clear? Right. He wrote a work, Poverty and Un-British Rule in India. Poverty and Un-British Rule in India, in which he emphasized on drain of wealth. Emphasize on drain of wealth from India to Britain, drain of wealth from India to Britain, drain of wealth from India to Britain, which led to drain of wealth from India, which led to extreme poverty and hunger in India. Extreme poverty and hunger in India. Poverty and hunger in India. Clear? Right. The amount of wealth drained from India to Britain, was quantified by R.C. Dutt, Ramesh Chand Dutt, in his work, The Economic History of India, 1902, The Economic History of India. Clear? Right. Another moderate leader, Mahadev Govind Ranade. Another moderate leader, Mahadev Govind Ranade, highlighted British exploitation through trade, industry and finance. Clear? Right. The economic policies of the British the economic policies of the British were also criticized by another moderate leader, Gopal Krishna Gokhale. Another moderate leader, Gopal Krishna Gokhale. Gopal Krishna Gokhale. Gopal Krishna Gokhale. Clear? So this was the most important contribution of moderates, economic critique of imperialism. It's clear? See, there's one important thing, one important question. Rohit Kumar. Anybody is here who cleared PT anytime? I just want to clear some doubts. Please reply. I'm working in Indian Air Force and don't have friends or colleagues in this place. Say, clear? Don't worry, Rohit. I'll give you my number and you just contact me. I'll help you out that how to clear your prelims examination. Don't get tensed. I'll give you my number. My number. Don't worry about it. Clear? Himanshu Sharma. Sir, role of G. Subramania in economic critique. G. Subramania also highlighted the policies of British that led to exploitation, especially through industry. Industry means that large industrial setups in Britain began to dump their finished products in India, began to take away the raw materials from India, and Indian cottage industries began to suffer, and Indian market got dependent on British products. This criticism was highlighted largely by G. Subramania Iyer. So G. Subramania along with other leaders contributed towards economic critique. This is considered to be the most important contribution of the moderate leaders in India at the same time. Clear? Apart from this contribution, another major contribution of moderate leader was that since they started to arouse awareness among the people of India, in order to reconcile the moderate leaders to some extent, British authority decided to give constitutional reforms to Indians, and to ensure this constitutional reform, British authority enacted another council act within India through Central Legislative Council known as Indian Council Act of 1892, which is also counted as an achievement of the moderates. In this context, we'll click into the Indian Council Act of 1892. So, the Indian Council Act of 1892. Fine, clear? We'll look into, clear? Last 2 years, sir, please guide. I'll guide you, Rohit. Don't worry about it. If you are into Air Force, don't get tensed. Carry with your work. I'll be there with you. Clear? So, Indian Council Act of 1892. Now, look into the provisions. Clear? As Indian Council Act indicate, enacted within India through Central Legislative Council. Clear? Under Indian Council Act of 1892, some constitutional rights were given to Indians. First of all, clear? Under this act, the principle of indirect election was introduced in India. According to this principle of indirect election, according to the concept of indirect election, the major taxpayers and the zamindari class and economically powerful class in India, they were allowed to elect their representatives to central and provincial legislative council. So masses were not allowed to elect their representatives, rather economically powerful sections as well as the major taxpayers among Indians, they were allowed to elect their representatives to central and provincial legislative council, not to the executive council having major power. Clear? So for the first time, Indians began to be included in legislative council in India. Moreover, it was also made clear that members of legislative councils could ask questions from the members of the executive council who were heading the departments and the portfolio system. So power to ask questions were given under the Indian Council Act of 1892. However, this power was highly restricted. Why this power was highly restricted? Because they could ask question only once, and that too with prior notice. Even if the answer was not satisfactory, there was no provision to ask supplementary question. So no provision to ask supplementary question. They could ask only question once. Clear? There was this restricted power was given. Thirdly, under Indian Council Act of 1892, the members of legislative councils were allowed to discuss the different items of the budget, but they could discuss on the items of budget, they could not place the veto or they could not vote on any item of the budget. So restricted rights were given to Indians for the first time in the legislative business of the British in India under Indian Council Act of 1892. So three things I'll repeat, clear? One is indirect election, second was power to ask question, not supplementary questions, and third was to discuss the items of the budget but not to vote or veto on any item of the budget. It's clear? Three provisions. Kapil Jamini, sir, about Indian Council Act of 1872. It was just a discussion that took place. Proper legislation was not passed. So it is not counted as a proper act. After 1861, you have Indian Council Act of 1892. Amzad Ali, sir, contact number sent properly. I'll send you my number. Don't worry. At the end of the session, I'll share my number with all of you. Don't worry about it. Kushal Kumar, I want to take optional class from you. I'll give you my number. We'll talk about that. Clear? Right now, we are focusing more on prelims. Just focus on that. Clear? Astha Chaurasia, sir, can you please clear which portion is more important for prelims and shouldn't be avoided? Modern history that we are discussing right now, it cannot be avoided in any way. That is why we are doing it as elaborately as possible. Is it fine? All the provisions of 1892 is clear. Now, again, just understand. Apart from these achieved contributions, one of the major limitation or drawback of the moderates was moderates never had faith in the capacity of masses to sacrifice, and moderates never tried to launch mass movement in India. Clear? In fact, their approach remained to be highly superficial in nature, and that is why moderates could not gain mass popularity in India, and that became the major drawback. Clear? So, approach of moderate was constitutional agitation. At the same time, contribution was economic critique of imperialism. Achievement was Indian Council Act of 1892. Drawback was divide of mass support, as they never trusted masses to sacrifice. Clear? All this major drawback of the moderates was a major achievement of another brand of nationalist leaders who began to emerge by the end of 19th century, and in contrast to moderates, they are known as extremists. Clear? So after moderates, the next class of national leaders that emerged in the course of Indian national movement were known as extremists. Clear? They are also known as militant nationalists. They are also known as radical nationalists. Clear? And these extremists believed in mass agitation, that is passive resistance. But mass agitation to be peaceful, not with violence. Make it clear. They were peaceful people. Mass agitation through peaceful means, not through violence. Clear? So moderates believed in constitutional agitation through petitions and prayers, not mass agitation. They never trusted in the capacity of masses. Extremists believed in mass agitation, but in a peaceful manner. None of them supported non-violence. Make it very clear. Violence was performed in the course of national movement only by one class of leaders known as revolutionaries, not by large number of leaders. Clear? Extremists. And extremists began to emerge by the end of 19th century, and they came to forefront in 1905, whereby they overshadowed nationalists, or rather moderates as well. And among those extremist leaders, the most important leader of this school of thought, this leader was Bal Gangadhar Tilak. The most important leader was Bal Gangadhar Tilak. Now we'll understand something about Tilak, one of the most important leader. Tilak, clear? Just understand. Okay. See, Bal Gangadhar Tilak was born in 1856 at a place known as Ratnagiri. He was born at a place known as Ratnagiri in modern Maharashtra. Clear? He was born in a reputed Chitpavan Brahmin family in Maharashtra. Clear? After attaining basic education, he became a graduate from Bombay University, and after attaining a graduate degree from Bombay University, clear? Bombay University, he dedicated his entire life to serve his motherland, clear? First of all, Tilak contributed towards social reforms among the Marathi people, and along with another reformer known as Gopal Ganesh Agarkar. Another reformer, reformer Gopal Ganesh Agarkar, established a very important reform organization known as the Deccan Education Society. Deccan Education Society in 1884 to establish educational institutions. To establish educational institutions. Educational institutions. Institution, clear? Institution, right? Understand, right? Tilak even started to celebrate. Tilak even started to celebrate the Ganpati festival from 1893 and Shivaji festival from 1895. That became highly popular. That became highly popular among Marathi people. Popular among Marathi people. Clear? Marathi. Now just understand. In 1896, plague broke out in the region of Pune. And Tilak asked the people to withhold the payment of taxes, clear? And at the same time requested British to provide relief materials to the people. So relief materials were given to the people by the British, but it was claimed by British officers that these materials has been hoarded and cornered in some houses of Pune. So therefore, two British officers named as Rand and Erst. Two British officers named as Rand and Erst as ordered search operations in different houses of Pune. Clear? Ordered search operations in the houses of Pune. Clear? Right. This affected the local sentiments. And two brothers, Damodar Chapekar and Balakrishna Chapekar assassinated Rand and Erst. Also known as Chapekar brothers, Rand and Erst. Right? Even though Tilak was against violence, he supported this act. In his paper, Kesari and Maratha. Kesari published in Marathi and Maratha published in English. Kesari and Maratha. Clear? Right. Understand that consequently, Tilak was arrested and imprisoned for 18 months. Right. Thereafter, he became highly popular. And was given the title of publicly accepted leader. Or the Lokmanya. Clear? Lokman. Right. Along with Tilak, other prominent extremist leaders were Lala Lajpat Rai in Punjab, Bipin Chandra Pal in Bengal, also known as Lal Bal Pal, Bipin Chandra Pal in Bengal, and Aurobindo Ghosh, again in Bengal, and Aurobindo Ghosh in Bengal. Aurobindo Ghosh in Bengal. Aurobindo Ghosh in Bengal. Clear? Right. Just understand, these extremist leaders came to forefront in 1905 when British decided to partition the most active province of India, Bengal. Most active province of India, Bengal, which exposed all the weaknesses of the moderates. Clear? Right. Moderates. Right. In order to oppose the partition of Bengal, into eastern and western halves, extremist leaders wanted to launch a mass agitation that was even accepted by the moderates. They could not avoid this. Accepted by the moderates. Right. Just understand, right? This led to the first mass movement. Known as the Swadeshi and the Boycott Movement, 1905 to 1908, known as the Swadeshi and the Boycott Movement. First mass movement, Swadeshi and the Boycott Movement. Clear? Now just make it clear, the first mass movement, you get questions. Clear? This movement was based on the philosophy of Atma Shakti. Or the self-reliance. And the most distinctive features are asked examination, and the most distinctive feature was growth in cultural sphere. Very important. Clear? Culture sphere. First of all, culture sphere. Clear? Right. Cultures. Right. Rabindranath Tagore asked the people to celebrate the festival of Raksha Bandhan. To show complete unity among the people of Bengal. Right. He also composed a song. He also composed a song. Amar Sonar Bangla. Composed song Amar Sonar Bangla. To highlight the rich cultural heritage of Bengal. To highlight the rich cultural heritage of Bengal. Heritage of Bengal. Clear? Of Bengal. Right. Another cultural personality. Another cultural personality. Bankim Chand Chattopadhyay. Bankim Chand Chattopadhyay composed Vande Mataram in Sanskrit. Composed Vande Mataram in Sanskrit. That became the theme song of the national movement. That became the theme song of the national movement. Right. Another literary personality. Another literary personality. Dakshina Ranjan Mitra Majumdar. Dakshina Ranjan Mitra Majumdar wrote a work Thakur Ma Jhuli. Wrote a work Thakur Ma Jhuli to highlight the folk stories of Bengal. To highlight the folk stories of Bengal. Folk stories of Bengal. Stories of Bengal. Clear? Folk stories of Bengal. Right. Moreover, clear? The leaders of Bengal established the Oriental Society of Art in 1907. The Oriental Society of Art in 1907 to provide fellowship to leading painters and artists. To leading painters and artists. Right. The first recipient of fellowship. The first recipient of fellowship from this society. Was a great painter. Nandlal Bose. Great painter Nandlal Bose. Great painter Nandlal Bose. Right. However, the most important painter of Bengal during Swadeshi movement, the most important painter of Bengal during this movement was Abanindranath Tagore. Abanindranath Tagore. Abanindranath Tagore. Abanindranath Tagore. Abanindranath Tagore. Okay? Tagore. Right. Moreover, to promote indigenous education, National College was established in Bengal. National College was established in Bengal with Aurobindo Ghosh as the principal. With Aurobindo Ghosh as the principal. Right. Even beyond Bengal, National College was established at Lahore. By Lala Lajpat Rai. Okay. Like during Swadeshi movement, during Swadeshi movement. V.O. Chidambaram Pillai. V.O. Chidambaram Pillai established the Swadeshi Steam Navigation Company. The Swadeshi Steam Navigation Company. It's also known as Tuticorin Company. Very important. Navigation Company to reduce dependency. To reduce dependency on British ships. British ships. Clear. British ships. Right now it's known as Tuticorin. Tamil Nadu. Clear. Right. Similar step was taken by Acharya P.C. Ray, who established the Bengal Chemical Factory. Who established the Bengal Chemical Factory. Bengal Chemical Factory to produce chemical products. To produce chemical products. To produce chemical products. Chemical products. Products. Clear? So in this way, the movement became very important. Clear? Now just understand. Clear? Right. When this movement was at its peak. Clear? When this movement was at its peak. When this movement was at its peak, it got seriously affected by two major factors. We'll understand these factors. Advait Academy, thank you so much. Clear? Thank you so much. Okay, two major factors. Number one, clear? One was communal clash. Clear? At the peak of Swadeshi movement. At the peak of Swadeshi movement. At the peak of Swadeshi movement. All India Muslim League. All India Muslim League was established in 1906. At Dhaka. Dhaka is modern Dhaka, Bangladesh. At Dhaka by Muslim leaders like Nawab Aga Khan. Nawab Aga Khan, Nawab Mohsinul Mulk, and Nawab Salimullah. Clear? Right. These leaders convinced Muslim masses to remain aloof from Swadeshi movement, which created a sense of suspicion among two religious communities, leading to communal riots. At the peak of Swadeshi movement. Clear? Right. Next, the second factor which affected this movement was were differences between the moderates and the extremist. Clear? Right. Moderates wanted to keep this movement confined within Bengal. Extremists wanted to extend this movement beyond Bengal, Clear? Bengal. Right. On account of such differences, in 1905, Dada by Naoroji, 1905, Dada by Naoroji became the Congress president, as he was equally respected by moderates and extremists. Respected by the moderates and the extremists. That this annual session was convened at Calcutta. This annual session was convened at Calcutta, and to maintain better relationship between moderates and extremists for compromise resolution were passed related to Swadeshi, boycott, national education, and Swaraj. These are 4 Calcutta resolutions, also known as compromise resolution. Swadeshi, boycott, national education, Swaraj. Moderates and extremists accepted these 4 agendas. Clear? Swaraj. Right. During Calcutta session, Dada by Naoroji demanded Swaraj. From Congress platform. Which meant Swaraj from Congress platform, which meant, Lucy Gray, I'll come, which meant right of autonomy or self-government, right of autonomy or self-government under overall control of the British. So not complete independence, British. See, make one correction here. I'm really sorry, clear? This year is not 1905. The Calcutta session was in 1906. Clear? Make this correction. It's 1906. Make that correct. 1905 it's session at Banaras. It's 1906. 1906. Kalim Khan, sir, can we go little bit fast? Okay, sure, as far as you want to, but I am concerned with other students. I can go fast. Clear? 1906. So make a correction, please. It's Calcutta session 1906. 1905 is a Banaras session. So Swaraj was demanded by Dada by Naoroji. Clear? Now, after this session came to an end, differences again continued between moderates and extremists, and finally, in the next year, the annual session of the Congress was convened at Surat. This is known as 1907 session, and this session was convened on the banks of the river Tapti. Clear? During this session, clear, Congress president was a moderate leader, Rash Bihari Ghosh. Congress president being Rash Bihari Ghosh. And when he went to attend or address the Congress leader, along with another moderate leader known as Firoz Shah Mehta, Firoz Shah Mehta. Someone threw his shoes on the face of Firoz Shah Mehta, and immediately Firoz Shah Mehta announced extremists should not be allowed to remain within Congress. Clear? And therefore, extremists also left the Congress session, and thereafter it led to formal split among the moderates and extremists, which is also known popularly as Surat split. Clear? With this Surat split, proper leadership could not be given to Swadeshi and boycott movement, and the movement gradually came to an end in the beginning of 1908. Clear? So the movement finally came to an end in 1908 because of two factors. One was communal rights because of the establishment of All India Muslim League, and second was differences between moderates and the extremists. Clear? As this movement came to an end, British adopted the policy of carrot and stick. Clear? Now, what do we mean by the policy of carrot and stick? Carrot means reward, and reward was to be given to moderates because moderates were never a challenge for British, and stick means brutal suppression or punishment, and this was to be given to extremists. As a mark of brutal suppression, British arrested the greatest leader, Bal Gangadhar Tilak. They arrested Bal Gangadhar Tilak, who was given imprisonment of 8 years and deported to Mandalay jail in Burma. So he was deported to the Mandalay jail in Burma for 6 years, 1908 to 1914. At the same time, Lala Lajpat Rai left India, went to United States. Bipin Chandra Pal left active politics, and Aurobindo Ghosh began to pursue spiritualism in his ashram at Pondicherry. So large or most of the most top leaders of extremism were ended by this time, and this was a brutal suppression against extremists. On the other hand, as a mark of carrot, appeasement to the moderates, British again decided to give another dose of constitutional reforms to the moderates, and in order to give such reforms to the moderates, the Viceroy of India, Lord Minto, clear? Lord Minto, and the Secretary of State for India, that's a member of British Parliament in London, Lord Morley. So Lord Morley and Indian Viceroy, Lord Minto, they drafted a set of proposals known as Morley-Minto reforms, and based on Morley-Minto reforms, British authority enacted another legislation known as Indian Council Act of 1909. Clear? So it must be understood as a mark to reconcile the moderates, reward the moderates, and with this perspective we'll understand the provisions of Indian Council Act of 1909. Clear? Now look into the provisions. Indian Councils Act of 1909 based on the reforms of Morley-Minto. Clear? Understand. It's very easy to understand the provisions if we understand the provisions of the previous Council Act 1892, because according to constitutional experts, the provisions of the Indian Council Act of 1909 were just a step forward from the previous Council Act of 1892. First of all, we had discussed that under Indian Council Act of 1892, the principle of indirect election was introduced to elect members to Legislative Council. Under Indian Council Act of 1909, principle of direct election was introduced, whereby masses could directly elect their representatives to central and provincial legislative council, even though this right of franchise was highly restricted in nature. But principle of direct election was introduced under this act just to appease and conciliate the moderates. Clear? Under this provision, clear, the members of legislative councils were given right to ask questions from the members of executive council, and at the same time, if not satisfied with the answer, they were even allowed to ask supplementary questions. Again, a step forward from the previous Council Act. Moreover, under the Indian Council Act of 1909, the members of legislative councils were allowed not only to discuss the items of the budget, but even to place the veto on single item of the budget, not the budget as a whole. It was again a step forward from the previous Council Act. Clear? But apart from this, as a continuity of the previous Council Act, two other provisions were made in this act. Number one, for the first time to conciliate the moderate, a provision was made that one Indian member would be nominated to Governor General's Executive Council, and the first Indian to be nominated to Governor General's Executive Council was Satyendra Prasad Sinha, who was given the portfolio of Law Department. Okay? This was additional provision. Moreover, the most controversial provision included under this Council Act was principle of separate electorates for Muslims. So, principle of separate electorates for Muslims was introduced under this act, whereby separate constituencies were to be demarcated, and from those constituencies, clear, only Muslim candidates could contest and only Muslim masses could vote. That meant that they were trying to protect the interest of Muslims, but they really wanted to create a religious divide among the people of India. So all these provisions were under Indian Council Act of 1909. Clear? So this was another major legislation acted by British. Clear? Meanwhile, for these years, behind these years, no major development took place in India. Moderates were reconciled. Extremists were outside India, especially Bal Gangadhar Tilak. And from 1908 to 1914, no major developments took place in India. But within this time, the most important nationalism of India got expressed outside India in North America by Sikh immigrants known as Ghadar movement. Clear? So Ghadar movement was organized by Sikh immigrants in North American region. They filled the necessary gap that existed from 1908 to 1914. We'll understand about Ghadar movement because in prelims this is a very important topic. Every alternate year we get questions from Ghadar movement, and this last time also the question was there on Ghadar movement. Clear? So now we'll look into Ghadar movement. Ghadar movement. Clear? Okay, see, large number of Sikh immigrants were settled in the region of North America, corresponding with United States and Canada. But when large number of students got enrolled in educational institutions, they also began to be discriminated, and they realized unless they are free in their own country, they cannot expect fair treatment outside India. And therefore, these students started to create awareness to liberate India. Among them, some students played very important role like Ram Nath Puri. He began to circulate a paper titled as Circular-e-Azadi, in which he emphasized for India's liberation. Second important leader in North America was G.D. Kumar. G.D. Kumar, who established Swadesh Sevak Home. In the city of Vancouver in Canada. Then third student was named as Taraknath Das, who began to publish a paper titled as Free Hindustan, again from the city of Vancouver from 1908. All these efforts created awareness among the people or Sikh migrants in North America. Since Canada was also a colony of Britain, British asked Canadian authority to take action, and therefore under such pressure, G.D. Kumar and Taraknath Das left the region of Canada, migrated to a adjoining country, that is United States, which was relatively more free. And in United States, they got settled down in the city of Seattle. Clear? And in Seattle in 1910, G.D. Kumar and Taraknath Das, clear, they came together to establish an organization known as United India House. Clear? And they began to give free lectures to Sikh immigrants to train them for liberation towards India. All such efforts taken by Indian students inspired a Sikh priest known as Bhagwan Singh, who was in Singapore, and from Singapore, Bhagwan Singh came to North America, and under his guidance, several Sikh leaders joined this agitation. Those Sikh leaders included Kartar Singh Sarabha, Kartar Singh Sarabha, Harnam Singh Tundilat, Harnam Singh Tundilat, and Bhai Parmanand, and Bhai Parmanand, and Bhai Parmanand. Clear? Right. With all such developments, Circulate Azadi means paper to promote Azadi, that is circulated among large number of people. Clear? Right. With all such efforts, the Sikh immigrants in North America, decided to promote a major agitation in India towards liberation, and they wanted a proper leader to take charge. At this time, an Indian intellectual, Lala Hardayal, went to United States to give lectures in different universities, and he decided to provide leadership to Sikh people. Clear? Right. He was highly influenced by two Indian revolutionaries. Rash Bihari Bose and Sachin Sanyal, who threw a bomb on Lord Hardinge at Chandni Chowk in Delhi. In 1912. Under leadership of Lala Hardayal, Sikh immigrants launched the movement known as Gadar movement, with the headquarter known as Yugantar Ashram, established at San Francisco. You got this question last year. Keep on looking previous year paper. These are very important. Clear? Yugantar Ashram at San Francisco. Clear? Just understand. However, this movement got affected just because of the beginning of First World War, largely. Since scenario of a global war was being created, Britain requested United States to take action against these major leaders, and therefore United States arrested Lala Hardayal, who was released with only this condition, that he will not provide leadership to Gadar revolutionaries. Clear? And thereafter the movement became leaderless. Moreover, this movement got affected because of one incident, and this incident is known in modern history as the Komagata Maru incident. Clear? Komagata Maru was the name of a Japanese ship. That carried 376 Indian passengers. 376 Indian passengers from Singapore to Canada. Under a Sikh contractor. Baba Gurdeep Singh. Right. However, this ship was anchored, A-N-C-H-O-R-E-D, anchored at Canada, but passengers were not allowed. To deboard. not allowed to deboard, and the ship began to return back with resentment. Return back with resentment. Meanwhile, First World War broke out. Meanwhile, First World War broke out, and British wanted the ship to return to India directly. Wanted the ship to return back to India directly. Clear? Right. The ship reached the coast of Baj near Calcutta, that led to clash with local authorities, that led to clash with local authorities, that led to clash with local authorities, in which 22 passengers died, more than 200 passengers arrested, and rest of them escaped. Rest of them escaped. So Ghadar movement came to an end. Clear? 1914. Okay. Just understand, in 1914 only, Tilak returned back to India, and Tilak was a changed personality by this time, because he was tortured by British authority continuously for 6 years, and in prison he turned out to be philosophical and spiritual in nature, who also wrote a work behind the prison. This work of Tilak is titled as Gita Rahasya. He wrote a work, Gita Rahasya, within the prison. When he returned back to India, he wanted to get integrated with the moderate leaders. Clear? And at this time, when he expressed this desire, he was supported by another great reformer of modern India, and this great reformer and a foreigner was a women leader, Annie Besant. Great leader, Annie Besant. Leader, Annie Besant. Annie Besant, clear? Annie Besant, right? Just to understand about Annie Besant, clear? Right? She came to India as a member of a religious organization known as the Theosophical Society, which was originally established at New York in United States. Clear? When she came to India in 1893, she began to express her opinion about India through her two papers. These two papers are titled as New India and Commonweal. New India and Commonweal. Moreover, she established Central Hindu School at Banaras. Central Hindu School at Banaras in 1898, which proved to be the nucleus for the establishment of the Banaras Hindu University. Establishment of Banaras Hindu University. University in 1916. In 1916 by Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya. Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya. Clear? Right. Annie Besant supported Tilak as she wanted to launch Home Rule movement. To create awareness about self-government or home rule. To create awareness about self-government or home rule. or home rule. Self-government or home rule. Home government or home rule. Self-government or home rule. Home rule, clear? Right. Home rule. Right. With support of any basant. With support of any basant. All extremist leaders were included with Congress. During its annual session at Lucknow. Presided by Ambika Charan Majumdar. Presided by Ambika Charan Majumdar. Presided by Ambika Charan Majumdar. Right. During this session, it's a historic session. During this session, All India Muslim League got merged with the Congress. All India Muslim League got merged with the Congress through Lucknow Pact. And this was supported by Bal Gangadhar Tilak and Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Clear? Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Clear? Right. However, Congress formally accepted the principle of separate electorates. Which proved to be controversial. Clear? No, just understand. Right, both Tilak and Annie Besant launched the Home Rule movement. 1916 to 18. Clear? Right. Annie Besant, Tilak, first of all, Tilak launched his Home Rule movement. They launched separately. Tilak launched his Home Rule movement in April 1916 in original Maratha territory, including Maharashtra, Karnataka, Central Province and Berar. Maharashtra, Karnataka, Central Province and Berar. Right. Annie Besant launched her Home Rule movement. In September 1916. See, here I'll let you know, very important question. Raj Bihari became a militant from a moderate, L.K. Malam. Make all of you very clear. There we have discussed about two different personalities. Raj Bihari is not the same one. First of all, one personality is known as Raj Bihari Ghosh. Another personality is Raj Bihari Bose. Do remember Raj Bihari Ghosh and Raj Bihari Bose. Clear? Raj Bihari Ghosh was a moderate leader and he was the president of Congress session at Surat. Clear? On the other hand, clear, Raj Bihari Bose was a revolutionary leader. These two are totally different personalities. Make it clear. Don't get confused. Raj Bihari Bose is a moderate leader. Raj Bihari Bose is a revolutionary. Clear? In fact, he was the person who led Indian National Army when Subhash Chandra Bose reached Singapore in 1943. Clear? So it's Ghosh and Bose, not the same person. Clear? So, Bihar, Annie Besant launched a movement in September 1916. Clear? Just understand, during this movement, both Tilak and Annie Besant, during this movement, both Tilak and Annie Besant went from village to village, gave speeches in local languages, and established small reading rooms and libraries to spread the message of home rule. Clear? That due to such down-to-earth approach, national movement touched the masses in real sense. This was the biggest achievement of this movement. Clear? In fact, such down-to-earth approach created insecurity among the British, and out of anxiety, British arrested Annie Besant. Clear? So Annie Besant was arrested by the British authority, and after the arrest of Annie Besant, all Congress leaders supported the Home Rule movement. Under such collective pressure, Annie Besant was released, and on request of Tilak, Annie Besant was elected as Congress President in 1917 when the session was convened at Calcutta. In this way, Annie Besant became the first woman president of Indian National Congress. So Annie Besant was the first woman president of Indian National Congress at Calcutta session in 1917. Clear? At the same time, since British could not stop the popularity of this movement, to reconcile Annie Besant and Indian leaders, British Secretary of State in London, Lord Montagu, made an important declaration in British Parliament known as August Declaration of 1917. And as per this August Declaration, he made it clear the ultimate aim of British in India is to associate more and more Indians in the system of administration so as to establish a responsible government. Clear? So it was decided to establish a responsible government at this time, and therefore they decided to promote some structural changes in Indian affairs. Annie Besant realized her aim of Home Rule movement has been achieved because declaration was given by British Secretary of State. She ended the Home Rule movement. Even Tilak could not sustain this movement because Tilak decided to file a case against British journalist Valentine Chirol, who declared Tilak to be father of Indian unrest. Since Annie Besant ended her movement and Tilak went to London at this time, the movement ended because of sustained leadership. So this movement ended by the beginning of 1918. Since August Declaration had been given, the Lord Montagu and Indian Viceroy Lord Chelmsford came together, and Montagu and Chelmsford drafted a set of elaborate provisions, and with these elaborate proposals, British Parliament enacted a comprehensive legislation to introduce structural changes in India of long-term character. And all those legislations enacted by British Parliament to introduce structural changes, these are known as Government of India Act. And this legislation is known as Government of India Act 1919. So we will discuss about the major provisions of Government of India Act 1919. Last year also in prelims there was a question from this act. Before this exam also there was question on Government of India Act 1919. Clear? So we'll come to Government of India Act 1919. Clear? This is clear. So moving to the Government of India Act 1919. So Government of India Act 1919. Clear? Just understand, structural changes to associate more and more Indians. Just remember this to understand the provision. Clear? Under the provisions of Government of India Act 1919, principle of bicameralism was introduced. Principle of bicameralism was introduced, whereby the central legislature was divided into two chambers, known as the Central Legislative Council and the Central Legislative Assembly. Known as the Central Legislative Council, and the Central Legislative Assembly, to include more and more Indians, Right, this act divided all the legislative subjects into the central list, and the provincial list. Central list and the provincial list. Central list and provincial list. Right. Moreover, clear. Right. Moreover, it provided for principle of separate electorates for Anglo-Indians, Sikhs and Christians. Right. It also ensured the establishment of the Central Public Service Commission to conduct regular examination for civil servants. Right. This marked the beginning of Indianization of civil services. Clear? Right. At provincial level, just understand, at provincial level, the scheme of Darki was introduced, whereby legislative subjects were divided into reserved and transferred list. Important subjects according to British, like irrigation, was placed under the reserved list. And less important subjects like agriculture under transferred list. Okay. The division of subjects proved to be faulty, and the scheme of Darki failed. It's clear. Darki. Just understand, clear? After this only several developments took place due to failure of Darki, like arrival of Simon Commission to India. Meanwhile, again we'll understand, clear? That all these developments were going on, and by this time Mahatma Gandhi arrived on India's political scene, contributed significantly towards India's independence, clear?